I've seen the fire in our nation's eyes when anger prowls for prey. I've heard good people draw their lines and call it holy rage. But the cross was never raised to bless the stones we throw. And if mercy leaves the house, there's something wrong down in the soul. Words ain't bullets, but they can hit the same. And once a heart turns cold enough, it forgets what grace is for. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place. No room for hate. No, no room for hate. No room for hate. You can wave a flag above it, you can quote a verse or two, you can dress it up like justice till it almost sounds like truth. But outrage ain't righteous when it changes with the side. And you can't love your neighbor, treating them like they're downrange. We're all image bearers, breath of God and dust. And you don't heal a broken land by teaching it not to trust. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place. No room for hate. No room for hate. No room for hate. Drag it to the cross, lay it in the ground. Let the blood of Jesus turn the whole thing around. Truth can still be spoken, courage still can stand, but rage don't get to rule the soul of a faithful man. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place.
Let revival start where the anger breaks.
Where the anger breaks.
Let healing rise up where the hurt gives way.
No room for hate.
No room for hate.
No, no room for hate.
No room for hate.
Not in Jesus' name. Oh, not in this house. Not in this heart. Not in His name. No room for hate.
Remember when entertainment was actually entertaining? When comedy was about being funny, movies were about telling great stories, And you didn't need a political lecture every time you hit play. Great entertainment still exists. It's just getting harder to find. Even the biggest streaming platforms leave audiences disappointed. That's why there's Studio TST, pure entertainment, real comedy, independent films, bold creators, movies, comedy, music, and more. And the home of fearless sketch comedy. That show tonight. Entertainment the way you want it. Funny, creative, unapologetic, and agenda-free. Studio TST. The future of entertainment starts here. Join Studio TST today for just $5 a month.
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Oh, wow.
This is such an upgrade.
With celebrities like Josh Duhamel, Christina Ricci, and Gina Rodriguez.
Dazzle me, Jeff.
It looks like Chuck E. Cheese.
Stream an all-new season of Hollywood House Lift with Jeff Lewis, now streaming on Freevee.
In uncertain times, we could use someone to lean on. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma will stand by you with plan options to fit your budget. If you've recently lost your job, had a baby, or moved, you can still get the healthcare coverage you and your family need. Financial help may be available for those who qualify. Call 855-452-BLUE or visit hereforyouok.com to see if you're eligible to enroll. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma, a division of Healthcare Service Corporation, a mutual legal reserve company.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
From red dirt roads to the Capitol steps, Rick's calling truth, no time for regrets. Fire in his voice, facts in his hand, talking sense to the heart of this land. It's the Rick Robinson Show, where the truth rides high. No spin, no script, just an eagle in the sky. From D.C. to Tulsa, he's calling it out. Mic in his hand, yeah, he's got the clout. Heartland Radio, raw and real. Tune in, speak up, and feel what we feel.
Oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody?
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
Otherwise known as Chat Lives Matter Day right here live on KLRMradio.com. I hope everybody's having a great Wednesday. I know we're late. I'm still doing the whole show. It's not my fault, man. Donald Trump said he was doing his cabinet meeting at 10 my time. So I figured we'd cover it for an hour, then I'd launch. And as usual, I made plans and all the, we're told our entire lives schedules matter. Except, I guess, not for the most important people in the country, huh? Anyway, do I sound bitter? I probably sound a little bitter. It's all right, though. Anyway, we got lots of stuff to talk about today. Anybody remember that old E.F. Hutton commercial? It's kind of where we're going today. Because the folks in both parties better start treating their base as if they are E.F. Hutton, because when they speak, they better start listening. I know the Democrats are more worried about that than we are, but still... you got to start letting them have what they're voting for and then let it all fall apart. Anyway, so we'll get back to that in just a second. I'm going to crank this back up for a second, though, because I have not had enough caffeine yet, and the music helps. Okay, sorry. I just needed a little bit more of the guitar riff. All right, so as we were talking about before, so we're going to be talking about elections a lot today. Because there are election nights when one candidate beats another candidate, and it's kind of a squeaker. And then there are election nights where voters walk into the room, flip over the table, unplug the machine, and leave a note that says, try listening next time. Texas just had one of those nights for those of you that might have missed the memo. And I know we live in a political world where every primary gets described like it's the Battle of Gettysburg, complete with yard signs and all that stuff. But this one actually matters because this was not just Ken Paxton beating John Cornyn. This was not just a runoff. This was not just Donald Trump weighing in late and the MAGA wing scoring another win. This was a message, and it wasn't even a subtle message. John Cornyn has been in the United States Senate for more than 2 decades. He's been in the Senate longer than I've been doing this, and I've been doing this going on 17 years. He was part of Senate leadership. He raised enormous money. He had the institutional support. He had the resume, supposedly. He had the relationships, or did he? He had all of the things Washington tells you are supposed to respect. And Texas Republican voters looked at all that and said, nah, we're good, bro. According to AP and Texas election reporting, Ken Paxton defeated Cornyn in the Republican Senate runoff and now moves on to face Democrat nominee James Talarico in November. And if you listen to the Democrats, Talarico's a shoo-in, but they thought that was the last guy they tried to put up to. Anybody remember Beto? Or I used to call him Bino. Anyway, so that's going to happen in November, and that is a major victory for Donald Trump's influence inside the Republican Party. And that part is true, but it is not the whole story. The deeper story is that the Republican base is no longer automatically impressed by seniority, fundraising ability, and membership to the Senate club. Politico wrote this like an obituary for the Republican establishment. Cornyn was the sober institutionalist. Cornyn was the deal maker. Cornyn was the steady hand. Cornyn's loss was the end of an era. So I have to say this, and I put this out on X earlier today. If you are a Republican and a supposed staunch member of the GOP and Politico is writing you a love letter, I don't really think much else needs to be said. But it gets better. I have another clip we'll be playing in a second from somebody else who you would not have thought wanted to give John Cornyn a love letter, but he did anyway. So here's the part Politico does not quite know what to do with. A lot of voters heard end of an era and said, good, that era stopped listening to us a long time ago, and so did the people in that era. And that is where we start today, because Texas did not give us one story. Texas gave us the entire theme that I put together for the day. Cornyn, I never can say the dude's names. Cornyn loses, Paxton rises. Democrats in Texas 35 reject a candidate who wanted to talk about prison camps for American Zionists. Al Green gets the boot, otherwise known as being retired after years of impeachment theater. And here in Oklahoma, we have our own governor's race starting to take shape with almost no public polling on the Democratic side, which I thought was weird. I spent the last couple of days, I was supposed to be off the last couple of days because Monday was my birthday and I don't normally do much work on Tuesdays. But I started trying to dig through and find polling data for Democrats in Oklahoma, and I really couldn't find any. So I thought that was weird. So today's theme is simple. You better start listening. So let's start with the big one, of course. Ken Paxton defeated John Corwin last night. And I want to be careful here because this is not a segment where we pretend Paxton comes into the general election with no baggage. He actually has a bit of it. He does not. Democrats are already celebrating the matchup because they believe Paxton is more vulnerable than Corwin would have been. Republicans may have gotten the fighter the base wanted, but Democrats think they have a target now. And we'll get to that. But primary night is not general election night, and the lesson from primary night is not complicated. Cornyn did not lose because voters forgot his resume. He lost because they remembered it and decided it wasn't enough. He lost because they felt like he stopped listening to them. That's going to be the key for a lot of today's show. Politico's piece on this race is almost perfect as a window into how Washington sees itself. The senator was a towering figure. He had a supposed sober temperament. He could cut deals. He respected the institution. His law signals the end of an era for the Republican establishment. And all of that is true. But what Washington calls respecting the institution, voters sometimes hear as forgetting who sent you there in the first place. That's the disconnect. The Senate Club looks at Cornyn and sees experience. The base looks at Cornyn and sees Washington muscle memory. The consultants look at Cornyn and see fundraising power. The voters look at Cornyn and see and ask, whether all that power ever actually felt like it belonged to them. And that's the point. All of these people that are lamenting Cornyn's loss, including him, fail to understand the fact that Texas voters decided they felt like he wasn't listening to them anymore. So then, if you want to know how badly they felt he wasn't listening to them, let's take a look at the margin. It was not a squeaker. It was not one of those election nights where we all stay up until 2 a.m. pretending the county clerk in some tiny precinct is going to change the future of the republic. This was a beatdown. This was, remember the whole, and we'll get into this later today too, the America 250 thing where all the left is like, oh my God, I can't believe we're doing a UFC fight on the grounds of the White House. Well, this was a pre-White House UFC beatdown. Paxton beat Corwin by about 27 points. Red State's early runoff piece had Paxton leading 62-38 with 60% reporting. And later election coverage confirmed this was not close. This is not a bad night. This is a rejection letter with a return receipt. And this is where establishment keeps asking the wrong question. They ask, how could Texas Republicans turn on John Cornyn? That's not the question Texas was asking, though. Texas kept asking Cornyn, why do you keep turning on us? We keep sending you there, expecting you to do the things that we have asked you to do, and you keep not doing them. So the better question is, when did John Cornyn stop sounding like Texas Republicans? Like I said a second ago, they shouldn't be asking, why did Texas Republicans turn on him? They should be asking why Texas Republicans felt like they have turned against him, because there's a difference between having a conservative voting record and having conservative instincts. There's a difference between voting right when the roll is called and fighting like the people back home are tired of being ignored. And that's the point. Everybody keeps asking, how did Trump get into this position that he's in not once, but twice? He tapped into the people that felt like they have been being ignored for a very long time. And now the left is trying to do the same thing with folks like Talarico and a few others. And don't make no mistakes, the communist side of the left, the left has made inroads. You can see that through places like New York City, where now Mondami's talking about, trying to wrest property away from landlords and make them community property, which we don't really have on the table for today, but we'll probably get into it either Friday or Monday, because we do need to talk about that, because I am a firm believer in giving the voters what they voted for so they can find out whether it works. I know the folks in Virginia are starting to have buyer's remorse. I think the folks in New York City might not be very far behind them. All right. So, but here's the thing. So the people in Texas felt like they were being ignored. And right now across the Republican base, voters are very clearly telling people we are done being micromanaged. You are supposed to work for us, not the other way around. And that should have been a clear signal from the voters last night in a lot of different ways. But I guarantee you most of DC wasn't paying attention. So this is the part Washington never understands until it's too late. A senator like John Cornyn can look at his record and say, I voted for conservative judges. I helped move Trump's tax cuts. I raised money. I counted votes. I delivered for the party. And a voter can look at the same record and say, fine, but did you fight for us like you understood in the moment? Both things can be true at the same time. This is what makes this more interesting than the cheap version of the argument. The cheap version is Cornyn was secretly a liberal. I mean, if Politico's pulling for you, maybe not so secretly. But that's not really the point. The sharper version is this. Cornyn became the kind of Republican Washington knows how to use. And voters are increasingly tired of Republicans Washington knows how to use. Red State's runoff piece framed the race as Texas grassroots versus D.C. establishment. It noted Trump's late endorsement of Paxton on May 19th helped push Paxton across the finish line. I would say it propelled him across the finish line, not that it pushed him. It also noted Cornyn tried to court Trump's endorsement, adjusted his language, defended his MAGA credentials, and reminded voters that he had helped Trump's agenda during the first term. And still, that did not work. This is the part that should make every consultant in Washington sit up straight and pay attention. Cornyn did the thing they always tell Republicans to do when they're in trouble with the base. He tried to remind everybody that he was useful. He tried to remind everybody that he was experienced. He tried to remind everybody that he could raise money, get votes, get things done, and get things through the Senate. But voters were no longer asking, can you operate the machine? They were asking, why does the machine always seem to operate on us? And the spending makes it even louder. Red State reported this as the most expensive Senate primary on record, with $120 million in advertising and Cornyn outspending Paxton 3-1. Now think about that. If you outspend the other guy 3-1, have 23 years of incumbency, have the Senate club behind you, have the donor network behind you, have the institutional resume behind you, and still lose by that kind of margin, that is not a campaign problem. That is a product recall. That is Texas voters saying, we tried this model, we know what it does, and we're sending it back. And again, that does not mean Paxton has no problems. He has real general election baggage. But the primary lesson is plain. Voters are not automatically renewing old contracts anymore. They are reading the fine print. All right, so we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to keep going with this because now we get into the Paxton v. Talarico fight. And God, I wish I lived in Texas so I had more to say about this fight. But I don't, so we'll let Texas decide. But I do have some stuff to weigh in about it. So we're going to take a break real quick. We'll be right back. My name's Rick Robinson. This is my show. We'll be back before you know it. Stay tuned.
They tried to quench the fire, drown it all in chains, tried to break our will and wash away our names. But every spark they buried only fed the flame. Now the cry of freedom's roaring through the rain. Hear the cry of freedom on the winds of change. Every voice united, breaking every chain. We're
Oops, that was not supposed to happen. I have an auto roll set up that shouldn't be set up anymore. All right, anyway, so welcome back into the program, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Rick Robinson. This is Wednesday, otherwise known as Chat Lives Matter Day, otherwise known as Hump Day. I know it doesn't feel like it because it was a holiday, but we're halfway through the work week already. And I feel every bit of 53 today. I wish I didn't. Caffeine's barely even doing the job today. Boo! Anyway, so we're back. We're live. And, well, before we get into the Talarico Cornyn fight that is now coming to Texas, which should be entertaining because the Democrats keep thinking they I feel like the Democrats keep playing the part of Wile E. Coyote in these things. But before we get to that, we got to talk about this because there's another thing that I feel like needs to be discussed because reasons. Let me see. Is that the one I'm looking for? No. Hang on. I got to find the one I'm looking for now because I just realized I don't have it. Oh, I'm in the wrong account for one. Sorry, I was promoting during the break and trying to push out the feeds in the different accounts that we have and realized that I was still on the wrong one. So let me grab the right bookmark here. And where is the one? Okay, this is the one I was looking for. Okay, so now we go. That one should be that one. Share this tab instead.
This is a bad night for America. You have a good man running against a bad man, and the bad man won. And just as a parent, that's tough. I mean, how do you have the kind of record that Paxton has, the things that he's done, the things he's done to his family, and then not apologize, not taking any accountability, not showing any kind of growth? I don't think I want to hear a lot of lecturing from Republicans about family values and all these different things and wagging their fingers in the face of people. It's a bad night for the country. It's a bad night for the Republican Party. It's a bad night for parents everywhere. At some point, character should matter. Nobody's perfect, but you do want to show some kind of growth. And there's zero growth. In fact, there's negative growth with this candidate, and he has the backing of the President of the United States and a bunch of voters, and it's terrible. This is bad.
Is it really a bad night, though? I mean, when an avowed communist, guy who's very familiar with Mother Jones, comes out and says this is a bad night for America, is it really a bad night for America when this guy says it's a bad night for America? Because to me, anytime that guy loses is a good night for us. Anytime that guy's on stage, basically crying is probably going to be a good night for us. Now, look, I will admit, Paxton had some stuff going on, but I don't live in Texas. That's the thing. If Van Jones lives in Texas, then he has every right to wag his finger at Texas voters and go, why did you pick this guy? But if you don't live in Texas, you don't get a say. That's one of the things that drove me nuts about the whole thing with I can't think of his name now. I've already wiped him from my memory. Little short dude, part of Kentucky Senate. Not Rand Paul, the other guy. Why can't I not think of his name right now? That's weird. Anyway, you guys know who I'm talking about. He had all this money flowing in from all over the country, and he was proud of it. When, 5 minutes ago, he was one of the ones talking about how out-of-state money's ruining our political system. But it's fine when his side does it. Anyway, but yeah, so before we get into that, I had to play that because, again, when an avowed communist and Politico are singing your praises, it probably means Texas made a good choice. So now, before everybody gets too high on the victory music, we do need to talk about what comes next. Ken Paxton won the primary. He won it big. He won it with the base behind him and Trump behind him. But November is a different kind of animal. Paxton now faces Democrat James Talarico in the general election, and Talarico is not some generic Democrat pulled out of a blue state factory. He is supposedly a Texan. He is a Texas state representative, a former middle school teacher, and a Presbyterian seminarian who thinks God is binary, by the way. To me, that seems like his whole claim to seminary schools should be yanked. Anyway, maybe that's just me. His own campaign leans into that image. Teacher, Texan, faith language, anti-corruption, language, working people language, and that may matter to some, because Talarico is not running as AOC in a cowboy hat. He is running as a seminary progressive populist who wants to sound like the conscience of Texas. And that is a different kind of challenge. Republicans would be making a mistake if they think this race is automatically over because Texas is red. Texas is red. Yes, Democrats have not won statewide there in a very long time, but Democrats are already looking at Paxton's vulnerabilities and thinking maybe, just maybe, this is our opening. And that could be the general election trapdoor. Paxton won the primary because the base wanted a fighter. Now he has to prove he can carry the baggage into a general election without handing Democrats their first win in a long time. And Talarico is going to try to make this about character, corruption, and moral language. But for him to be able to do that, he has to be able to stand on some of the things that he has said. And I'm going to say this. I think honestly, a lot of folks that should be paying attention probably haven't been. But it's not like Paxton hasn't already come out swinging, because he knew if he won, this was going to be, if he won the primary, that he already knew who he was facing. So I do want to play a couple of things that I thought were interesting. And a couple of different ads that I've seen come out, and then we'll let you guys talk about them if you want to.
This is Texas. This is not.
There are many more than 2 biological sexes. In fact, there are 6.
This is Texas. This is not.
The American flag is such a complicated symbol for most of us.
This is Texas. This is not.
They're going to call me a radical leftist.
This is Texas. This is not.
Something that you love that's not family or friends.
I love, I'm just saying this because it's on my mind, the trans children.
This is Texas. This is not.
Our southern border should be like our front porch. There should be a giant welcome mat out front.
This is Texas. This is not.
It is now existential that we try to reduce our meat consumption. I am proud to say that our campaign has officially become a non-meat campaign.
This is Texas. This is not.
All right, so not only does that ad do a great job of driving all the points home, it also points out a bit of hypocrisy, because I saw a post from Talarico's campaign today with him looking rather uncomfortable while I was trying to bite into what looked like a beef rib. So much for that non-meat campaign. Huh? All right, so we've got another one of those. I'm just gonna go ahead and play it now instead of waiting. So hang on. Let me at least put myself back on screen for a second so you guys don't see the behind the scenes stuff. So hang on. All right, so that was ad number 1. Here's ad number 2. This one's a bit longer, but worth the watch in my opinion. And so Aggie in the chat, howdy, stitching while listening. I probably should have said stabbing while listening, but anyway. Oh wait, never mind. My bad.
Move over, Davy Crockett. There's a new Texas trailblazer in town, and their name is James Talarico, the man who bragged, "Our office is the first in the history of Texas to add pronouns to our official business cards."
I am running around like a crazy person today,
spreading his white skin wherever he goes.
I am not a perfect Christian. Prophetic voices like Jesus have helped me reckon with my own whiteness, my own masculinity, and it's a painful process.
Bearing the cross of white skin and unambiguous masculinity.
I was a big nerd in high school, never played sports. I probably shouldn't out myself like this. Sex is a spectrum, and oftentimes it can be very ambiguous. God is both masculine and feminine and everything in between. God is non-binary.
Straight from Revelations in the woke James Bible.
I want us all to be aware of that. There are many more than 2 biological sexes. In fact, there are 6.
And on the 7th day, they rested. But not James Talarico. He built an ark big enough for all creatures.
To be able to write legislation that benefits not just the people, but also our animal friends.
Just like the Supreme Court said, one cow, one vote.
Now, existential, that we try to reduce our meat consumption. It's the right thing to do and the moral thing to do.
The 11th commandment, thou shalt not smoke brisket.
I am proud to say that our campaign has officially become a non-meat campaign.
So step aside, Sam Houston. Talarico's bravery towers over Texas. He's fighting for all 6 genders and tens of thousands of species.
I guess we just have a different moral yardstick.
You know what insults Jesus?
Binary white people who eat barbecue and remember the Alamo?
There's only been one perfect Christian.
And they certainly weren't a carnivorous Caucasian binary Homo sapien, according to the woke Gospel of James.
They're gonna call me a radical leftist, un-Texan, un-American.
And bar none, the weirdest candidate for Senate the Lone Star State has ever seen.
I mean, I will say I agree with that last line pretty much wholeheartedly. I thought Beto was a bad pick for Texas. The fact that this guy's actually, I mean, look, so Beto was a carpetbagger moving into Texas thinking that he could make a dent. This guy's actually from your state, Texans. He's part of you. What have you done? What have you done that has allowed this kind of crazy to start taking root there? The woke Gospel of James. Dude, there are so many lines from that ad that are going to be stuck in my head for the rest of the day, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to play it, because I felt like we had to share the pain. But yeah, so again, we were talking about the fact that we're now going to start seeing those two facing off with one another. But of course, it already seems like Paxton's campaign is off to a running start of tackling exactly what they need to. So yes, Republicans should be paying attention because Paxton did win the primary. Washington needs to be paying attention, especially John Thune, because we keep sending the people who aren't doing our will home, as we should have been doing this entire time. Because that's the thing. Everybody's, but if we clean house and we get rid of all the people that can bring in the money and we do this and we do that, then there's a good chance we might lose. Then you know what? Then we probably deserve to lose. Because if we're not willing to go down in flames for our own principles, that's something that I feel like we have lost in this country. And I'm not saying that to be mean, cruel, or anything else. I'm telling you how I actually feel about it and how I think you should feel about it, because our founding fathers laid everything on the line. They knew if they lost, they were going to be hung as traitors, and they would be branded as rebel traitor scum for the rest of eternity if they lost, and they took the gamble anyway. I think it's time that we start taking those same kind of gambles instead of playing it safe, especially when it comes to people that aren't willing to do what we've asked them to do. The SAVE Act is an 85-15 issue last time I looked at the numbers, and the Senate went home instead of dealing with it. Now, I think there are other reasons why Thune sent them home. Because there are a lot of ousted senators who are pissed off now, and a lot of them decided they were going to change their vote and call for a vote on the War Powers Act and try to flip it. Now, maybe that's part of the reason why he sent people home. I want to try to give him the benefit of the doubt. But the fact of the matter is, he is a very weak leader. He cannot even get his own people to vote for the things that President Donald Trump says that we need and that we agree with him on. It would be one thing if 85% of the country was saying no and Donald Trump was still pushing for the Save America Act to go through. But 85% of the country is saying yes, Trump is pushing for it, and the people that are supposed to be on his side went on vacation. So there's a reason why Donald Trump has been lining up and putting his support in places where presidents haven't routinely done that before. When is the last time you saw a president make an endorsement or at least speak about a mayoral campaign, even if it is in California? When is the last time you saw that happen? So again, Talarico is going to be trying to make all of this about character. As you can see, Paxton kind of knew that already. So he's already come out swinging. The lesson is this primary is not everything is easy now. The lesson is voters are restless. Voters are volatile. Voters are tired of being told what they have to accept. That applies to Democrats too, and that takes us to Texas 35. Texas Democrats rejected crazy mode. Texas Republicans rejected automatic renewal, but Texas Democrats, at least in one very important congressional runoff, also rejected crazy mode. In Texas 35 congressional district, Johnny Garcia defeated Maureen Galindo. You may remember her as the woman who was complaining on social media recently that a lot of MAGA folks were claiming that she wanted to put Jews into concentration camps. And this was their Democratic runoff. According to Red State's Jennifer Oliver O'Connell, the piece that I pulled to pull this from, the headline basically tells the story. Failed at Texas 35 Democrat candidate proves voters are over crazy and ready for credible. Now, the reason this race got national attention is not because the whole country suddenly became obsessed with a House runoff in Texas. It got attention because Galindo had made comments about turning an ICE detention facility into a prison for American Zionists. The article also summarized the backlash and noted that Garcia, a former sheriff's deputy, SWAT hostage negotiator, and Bexar County Sheriff's Office public information officer, came off as the far more normal candidate in the race. So the Washington Post and Texas Tribune coverage also confirmed the basic result. Garcia defeated Galindo after the remarks became a national problem for Democrats. And that's the important point. Even Democratic voters in Texas looked at the prison for Zionist candidate and said, maybe let's not make the campaign commercial for the other side. And good for them. Seriously. This is one of those stories where Republicans should be able to say two things at the same time. One, the comments were outrageous and should have been disqualifying from the start. Two, Democratic voters made the better choice in the runoff. That actually strengthens the larger theme of the day. Texas voters are angry, but they are not necessarily suicidal. Republican voters said no to the old establishment lane. Democratic voters in Texas 35 said no to the candidate who was about to become a national opposition research gift basket. And that tells you something. People may be frustrated. People may be polarized. People may be mad at the system. But there are still voters out there who can spot political crazy when it walks in wearing a name tag. And in Texas 35, they spotted it plain and simple. So the Texas story is not just MAGA beat establishment. It's broader than that. The Texas story is voters are evaluating what's in front of them, and they are not automatically accepting the party's preferred script anymore. Sometimes that means rejecting the Senate's institutions or their institutionalists. Sometimes that means rejecting the prison camp activist. And sometimes it means retiring the guy who made impeachment theater a personality, which brings us to the next one. So now let's talk about Al Green, because this one is almost too poetic. Al Green has been in Congress for more than 2 decades. He became nationally known not because he was some major legislative powerhouse, but because he made himself one of the faces of impeach Trump at all cost politics. If there was a Trump speech, Al Green was ready. If there was a camera, Al Green was ready. If there was an impeachment resolution nobody asked for, Al Green, again, was ready. And now, adios, muchacho. Red State's Nick Arapice says all of it. Christian Menifee defeated Al Green in the Democratic runoff for the redrawn 18th district, with Green getting blown out badly in the cited results. The piece frames it as Green being shown the door after 21 years in Congress. Now, to be fair, and we should be fair, redistricting matters here. Green's old district was changed. He ended up in a different fight than the one he might have expected years ago. This was not just a normal incumbent primary under normal conditions, but voters still had the final say, and they didn't whisper. There's something darkly funny about Al Green spending years trying to impeach Donald Trump only for voters to get to Al Green first. He chased Trump's political funeral for years, and his own district situation turned into a retirement party. And again, this fits the overall theme because nobody's taking Washington's crap anymore. Cornyn did not get automatic renewal from Republican voters. Galindo did not get automatic acceptance from Democrat voters. And the voters, when it came to Al Green, said automatic renewal canceled. So he had been around forever and knew how to yell at Trump on cue, but Texas voters hit reset in multiple directions, and that brings us closer to home. So meanwhile, back in Oklahoma, because we are not just doing national cable news karaoke here, let's bring this back home for a minute. Oklahoma has its own governor's race coming. Kevin Stitt is term limited. The primary is set for June 16th. That is next month. And what is strange, and I think it is worth saying out loud, is how little public polling we have on the Democratic side. The listed Democratic field is Cindy Munson, Constance Johnson, and Aria Ozma. Munson is the Oklahoma House Minority Leader and probably the most institutionally visible Democrat in the race. She was first elected to the Oklahoma House in 2015 during a special election, became the first Asian American woman elected to the Oklahoma legislature, and has served as House Minority Leader. Her campaign lane is pretty clear: public schools, teacher pay, working families, healthcare cost, and abortion policy. Constance Johnson is a former state senator and familiar statewide. She's as a Democratic candidate. She has been around Oklahoma Democratic politics for a long time, and her lane is more traditional: progressive activism, criminal justice, reproductive rights, marijuana policy, death penalty opposition, and the familiar Oklahoma Democratic activist lane. Aria Ozma is the outsider name in the Democratic field here in Oklahoma. Ballotpedia lists him as a Democratic candidate with a background that includes MIT, finance, and a prior U.S. Senate run in Oklahoma. But polling, not much that I can find publicly. There are prediction market numbers floating around, but prediction markets are not polls. They tell you where traders are pulling money or where the market sentiment sits. They do not tell you what a random sample of Oklahoma voters said when contacted by a pollster. So the honest line right now is this: Oklahoma Democrats are headed toward a primary with very little public polling oxygen, at least compared to the Republican side. And to me, that is odd because, again, the election is next month, and Oklahoma has been known to elect Democratic governors before. This is not 2 years out. This is not one of those races where the candidates are still pretending they are prayerfully considering while accidentally buying domain names. Kind of like that guy who accidentally got a Nazi tattoo. This thing is here. It's next month. It's less than 3 weeks away. Well, right at about 3 weeks away. And yet to the Democrats, and yet on the Democratic side, the public data is thin. Very, very thin. Also worth noting, I'm not seeing a libertarian gubernatorial candidate listed for this cycle. The non-major party names showing up are independents Robert Brooks, Orlando Lynn, Bush, and Jerry Griffin. So Texas had the fireworks. Oklahoma had, at least on that side of the ballot, has the waiting room. But the Republican side, that's a little bit different. So we're going to be talking about that now. We're talking about large political mood today, and the theme is pretty simple. Automatic renewal has been canceled for a lot of folks that have been in D.C. for a long time. Texas gave us the loudest version of that. Ken Paxton beats John Cornyn. Johnny Garcia beats Maureen Galindo in Texas 35. Christian Menifee beats Al Green in Houston. But here in Oklahoma, we have our own governor's race coming fast. And if you look at the Republican side, there is polling, there is movement. There is no guarantee this thing ends neatly in one round. The Oklahoma Republican primary for governor is set for June 16th, and the field is crowded. Gettner Drummond, Charles McCall, Mike Mazzei, Chip Keating, Jake Merrick, Lisa Mitchell, Haynes, and Kenneth Sturgill, along with Jennifer Domenico Tillett and Caleb Anthony Taylor. When you see a field that large, the first question is not just who leads. The first question is who makes the actual runoff? Because in a crowded primary, especially with multiple candidates who can plausibly claim some lane of the party, the math can get messy fast. The cleanest older public poll I found came from Cole Hargrove Snodgrass and Associates earlier this year. That poll had Gettner Drummond leading with 36% of likely Republican primary voters. Charles McCall was at 14%. Mike Mazzei was at 13%. Chip Keating at 13%. Jake Merrick at 5% and 19% undecided. That is a front runner, yes, but not a coronation. Because if Drummond is in the 30s, three other candidates are bunched up in the low to mid teens. You're not just watching a race for first, you're watching a knife fight for the second runoff spot. Newer reporting suggests the race may have tightened into a top four fight among Drummond, Massey, Keating, and McCall. I would phrase that carefully, or I am going to be phrasing that carefully until we have the full underlying polling in hand, but that general shape does make sense. Drummond is the known statewide name, attorney general, veteran, rancher, banker, public fights with Governor Stitt, and a law and order profile. However, there have been, and I'm researching this, there have been some campaign ads talking about him actually not only endorsing Biden, but also donating to Biden, and I'm trying to find a paper trail for that. McCall is the former House Speaker, and he has that lane. Institutional Republican, legislative experience, rural and southeastern Oklahoma roots. Massey is running the budget, property tax accountability, and business lane. Keating has the public safety lane. He also kind of has name recognition. The Keating family name and an outsider style pitch with law enforcement and oil and gas experience. For anybody who's not familiar with Oklahoma politics, Governor Keating was a Democrat a few years ago, and now this kid's running as a Republican with the same name. So then you have Haynes, Sturgill, Domenico Tillett, and Taylor trying to find any oxygen left in the room in a field where the top four are sucking up most of the attention. That is why this race is interesting. Oklahoma Republicans may not have any form of Texas fireworks yet, but the fuse is definitely sticking out of the box. And if the broader mood is anti-establishment, anti-automatic renewal, anti-business as usual, then every candidate in this race has to answer a very simple question. Are you asking voters to hire you, or are you assuming the lane already belongs to you? Because Texas just reminded everybody what happens when voters think somebody is assuming. And as my dad always used to say, and my granddad always used to say, everybody knows what happens when you assume. On that note, we are going to be taking a break. When we come back, hour 2 still to come. So hang out for a bit. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
I've seen the fire in our nation's eyes when anger prowls for prey. I've heard good people draw their lines and call it holy rage. But the cross was never raised to bless the stones we throw. And if mercy leaves the house, there's something wrong down in the soul. Words ain't bullets, but they can hit the same. And once a heart turns cold enough, it forgets what grace is for. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place. No room for hate. No room for hate. No room for hate. You can wave a flag above it, you can quote a verse or two, dress it up like justice, till it almost sounds like truth. But outrage ain't righteous when it changes with the side, and you can't love your neighbor, treating them like they're downrange. We're all image bearers, breath of God and dust, and you don't heal a broken land by teaching it not to trust. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place. No room for hate. No room for hate. No room for hate. Drag it to the cross, lay it in the ground. Let the blood of Jesus turn the whole thing around. Truth can still be spoken, courage still can stand, but rage don't get to rule the soul of a faithful man. There's no room for hate in America tonight. No room in the home where the children need the light. No room in the heart where the Savior's supposed to stay. If Jesus owns the house, then hatred don't got no place.
Let revival start where the anger breaks.
Where the anger breaks.
Let healing rise up where the hurt gives way.
No room for hate.
No room for hate.
No room for hate.
No room for hate.
Not in Jesus' name. Oh, not in this house. Not in this heart. Not in His name. No room for hate.
Remember when entertainment was actually entertaining? When comedy was about being funny, movies were about telling great stories, and you didn't need a political lecture every time you hit play. Great entertainment still exists, it's just getting harder to find. Even the biggest streaming platforms leave audiences disappointed. That's why there's Studio TST, pure entertainment, real comedy, independent films, bold creators, movies, comedy, music, and more, and the home of fearless sketch comedy. That show tonight, entertainment the way you want it. Funny, creative, unapologetic, and agenda-free. Studio TST, the future of entertainment starts here. Join Studio TST today for just $5 a month.
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Celebrity designer Jeff Lewis is back with Hollywood House Lift.
I'm excited to be working with new clients.
I'm not getting rid of that.
I hope I never see you both again.
An all-new season.
Those have to go. That has to go.
From oh, wow,
It's been an actual nightmare.
to oh, wow.
This is such an upgrade.
With celebrities like Josh Duhamel, Christina Ricci, and Gina Rodriguez. Dazzle me, Jeff.
It looks like Chuck E. Cheese.
Stream an all-new season of Hollywood House Lift with Jeff Lewis, now streaming on Freevee.
In uncertain times, we could use someone to lean on. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma will stand by you with plan options to fit your budget. If you've recently lost your job, had a baby, or moved, you can still get the healthcare coverage you and your family need. Financial help may be available for those who qualify. Call 855-452-BLUE or visit hereforyouok.com to see if you're eligible to enroll. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma, a division of Healthcare Service Corporation, a mutual legal reserve company.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
From red dirt roads to the Capitol steps, Rick's calling truth, no time for regrets. Fire in his voice, facts in his hand, talking sense to the heart of this land. It's the Rick Robinson Show where the truth rides high. No spin, no script, just an eagle in the sky. From D.C. to Tulsa, he's calling it out. Mic in his hand, yeah, he's got the clout. Heartland Radio, raw and real. Tune in, speak up, and feel what we feel. He's breaking down the noise, cutting through the lies, shining light where the shadow hides. With guests in the mix and callers on cue, he's a voice for the many, not the few.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody?
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
And welcome back into the program. Happy Chat Lives Matter Day right here live on KLRnradio.com. I know we're running things a little bit differently today. I'll be back tonight starting to push buttons for the Inquiry Crowd, 7 p.m. Eastern, followed by the Conservative Curmudgeon, 8 p.m. Eastern, followed by the Behind Enemy Lines radio show featuring Ross and Gene and usually myself. Also at, 10 p.m.? 9 p.m. Eastern. Sorry. Then Rick and Orty, 10 p.m. Eastern, followed by what I hope will be Edge of Liberty tonight. I was off Monday because of my birthday and it being Memorial Day, and Sean was off as well. So hopefully he'll be back tonight. Also, want to give a quick shout out to BZ and Jake. For those of you who've been following along, Jake was a foster dog that they took in and then they decided to keep. Well, it looks like Jake is about to cross the Rainbow Bridge. So little bit of thoughts and prayers for BZ, Mrs. BZ, and Jake. And again, Jake, if you happen to be hearing this, When you get across that rainbow bridge, look for Jack. You'll know him when you see him. Best dog a boy could have ever asked for. And yeah, he's the one I've talked about before, where my dad, I'm sure, violated some health regulations, letting me get a picture taken with my favorite dog of all time when I was, I think, 6 years old, in a portrait studio, I believe in either Sears, Dillard's, or JCPenney. I can't remember which one. But that was in the 70s, so it may have been before they had restrictions like they have now. And if that's true, then we were probably part of the reason why they have some of those restrictions now. Anyway, so there's been some news come up while we were on the break. So I've got some stuff that wasn't actually part of my prepared scripting for today. So we're going to talk about this as soon as I can find it again. Well, actually, I'll probably go into my notes again first while I'm digging, because it'll make life easier. So let's see. Yeah, I can't find. There were some kind of bigger stories that I wanted to touch on that I noticed earlier, and then I forgot to bookmark, and now I can't find them. All right, so let's just get back to the notes instead. So here we go. So, okay, so we got to talk about this one, right? Because remember how, Joe Biden's whole selling point was how much more transparent his administration was going to be than they felt like the Trump administration was, especially if you were a Democrat. However, we're moving from voters rejecting political assumptions to institutions trying to manage what the public is allowed to see and hear. Joe Biden has filed lawsuits against the Justice Department to block release of recordings and transcripts tied to interviews he gave ghostwriter Mark Zowanister for his memoir, materials that were central to special counsel Robert Hur's classified documents investigation. Town Hall's Matt Vespa piece hits this hard, framing this around the old line that Biden was supposedly sharp as a tack while the public was watching something very different in real time. And that is the real story here. Not just Biden, not just her, not just classified documents. The story is that the public was told not to believe its own eyes. Anybody remember how prominent that theme was in the book 1984? Just me. People watched Joe Biden. People listened to him. People saw the confusion, the pauses, the derailed train of thoughts that happened over and over and over again, the visible decline. And for a long time, the institutional answer was, no. He's fine. There's nothing to see here. He's sharp. He's engaged. He's running circles around everybody anytime he's behind closed doors, meaning he's great when you can't see him. Now, are we talking about whether the public should hear? Now we're talking about whether the public should hear the tapes. And the question becomes pretty obvious. If the interview went well, why fight so hard to keep people from hearing it? That's not a legal argument. That is a common sense argument. And sometimes common sense gets to the courthouse before the lawyers do. They told us Joe Biden was sharp as a tack. Now they are in court trying to make sure nobody hears the tape measure. Now, to be precise, I'm not saying we know everything that is on those recordings. The lawsuit itself is the hook. The fight over release is what fuels the larger transparency question. And the deeper point is not just about Biden's age or Biden's memory. It is about trust. It is about institutions. It is about whether people who demanded authority also accepted accountability. And we've seen throughout history, especially lately, over and over and over again, people demanding authority but then refusing to accept any accountability. Because when the public asks to see the evidence and the answer is, trust us, bro, but no, we're not going to let you hear those tapes. That is not how trust works. It's not how trust in institutions gets rebuilt. This is how suspicions get confirmed. And while we're on the subject of selective standards, let's talk about Democratic reactions to Graham Plattner. According to Nick Arama, Rep. Jake Ashenlos is saying Plattner's Nazi tattoo and commentary were personally disqualifying, and honestly, that should not be a controversial statement. That should be the easiest political layup in the world. But according to that same Red State piece, what happened next tells you everything. Some Democrats and left-wing voices started hammering him because they thought he was hurting the party's chances in Maine. And that is where the mask slips. Because if your first concern is Senate math instead of Nazi tattoo, maybe the problem is not just the candidate. Maybe the problem is the moral calculation. So that ties into another story, which I do believe I have here, which was not part of my stack of stuff. And I'm looking for it now. Where was that one? I found the other stories I was looking for that I couldn't find, but now I can't find the one that ties into the one that I was trying to talk about. Go figure. Let's see. Where did that story go? Anyway, so there was a tie-in. I swear there was. I can't find it now. But yeah, it was about Democrats signaling all kinds of issues. Oh, wait, there we go. I knew it was here somewhere. This is from Jeff Charles. Democrats' position on black voting power shows just how dishonest they actually are. So remember how Democrats were screaming like banshees over the Supreme Court's ruling on majority black districts in southern states? Well, it seems that for all their protestations, they don't really care about the issue as much as they would have us think. In fact, their voters are more concerned about ensuring the Democrat Party attains more power than defending black people or any other racial minority for that matter. Politico dropped a report on Tuesday that is flying under the radar. The news outlet conducted a poll of Kamala Harris voters to gauge attitudes towards the issue of supposedly protecting black voting power. The first group of respondents were asked whether it was more important to protect black voting power or to abandon this issue in favor of redrawing districts in a way that gave Democrats more seats in Congress. About 54% of Harris voters said it was more important to protect black and minority voting power, while 26% said Democrats should say screw it and create as many seats as possible, even if it diminished minority voting power. That doesn't seem too odd, but wait, there's more. The other group of voters that was presented with the same question. However, in this case, the researcher also gave them additional context, explaining the Supreme Court's ruling and recent Republican gerrymandering efforts in red states. About 45% of this group believe Democrats should push back on Republicans by drawing more Democratic seats, even if it reduces the number of minority districts. About 32% said those districts should be preserved, and 23% said they did not know which route to take. But we're still not done. When the researchers broke down the results by race, the results became even more surprising. Among black Harris voters, 42% were willing to jettison minority voting districts to get more seats for Democrats, along with 45% of Hispanics and 48% of Asians. But wait a minute. I'm old enough to remember how Democrats were shouting about the Supreme Court ruling being a return to the days of Jim Crow. In fact, pulling this directly from the article that I've been kind of perusing here, here's a little bit of excerpts about all of that stuff. If you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu, and yet she doesn't say anything about all of the blue states in the Northeast corridor that have zero Republican representation anymore. Zero. I think districts should be broken down based on party representation, not color representation. But then again, I live by Martin Luther King's dream of one day my children will be known for the content of their character, not the color of their skin. Ever since Barack Obama took office, everything in race relations has gone backwards at warp 9. And it's crazy to me to think about, because I've said this before. This should have been the end of open racial hostilities in America, because a bunch of white people voted for a black guy to be president. That should have been enough. That should have been it. That should have been the end of it. But you know what happened? All the people that made themselves prominent off of the backs of all of these people that feel like they are not being represented, they are not being paid attention to, they felt like their money was going to start drying up. And if you're wondering what's really happening with all these places where people are starting to lose that you never really expected to see lose, it's that their funding machines are drying up. We're now finding out that a lot of this fraud and everything that we're uncovering, everything from USAID to a lot of other supposed NGOs, has been being used as a Democratic funding monstrosity. And now we're seeing the party starting to fall apart, which is why you're starting to see the voices that they were able to hold down for the longest time rising to the surface. But now you're seeing a lot of prominent Democrats who are screaming and yelling that they want communism. And in some cases, even when they have communism, it ain't enough. There's a story right now that I just saw come out. Apparently, there were hundreds of protesters outside of Gracie Mansion. This just came out a little bit ago. So on the heels of skyrocketing anti-Semitism in New York and the news that Mondami's socialist seizure of property is about to begin, the anti-Mondami protests have begun. Hopefully this means New Yorkers are waking up on the dangers and to the dangers of electing an Islamic socialist as a mayor, and the Mondami's run will end after his first term. Because again, there is no recall option for New York City mayor, which I find really weird and huge, and not in a good way. But anyway, so we're going to pull the video from this. I was reading some of Amy Curtis's piece about this, but we're going to pull the video clip from this real quick. So hang on. Now, I'm going to let that play again because it's kind of short. But notice the difference between when we protest versus when they do. And look, I'm not trying to be a dick about it, and I'm not saying we need to go as far as they do, but when are we going to start making noise? I mean, look, I get it. You guys were standing there. You were being respectful. You're following the actual definition of a peaceful protest. I get it, but they don't. And they never will, because that doesn't get them noticed. That doesn't get them noticed. But yeah, so maybe the tide is starting to turn in New York City as well. Remember, I talked about that earlier. I know a lot of Virginians are having buyer's remorse when it comes to their governor. A lot of folks in New York City seem to be having buyer's remorse about their mayor. Because anyway, nice. Sorry, I'm reading somebody a BZ quote tweeted me, and it says, direct from the House of conservative Schadenfreude. P.S. All you other John Cornyns and Leader Thunes, we're coming for you next. I hope that's true. I really do. Anyway, I hope that's true. I really do. But yeah, so I wanted to talk about that because, yeah, there's actual protests going on. Speaking of protests, and this isn't in my notes either, but I wanted to touch on this as well. So apparently there was a riot outside of a New Jersey ICE detention facility. And yeah, one of those, supposedly peaceful protests that wasn't so peaceful. But now there's a hunger strike. Yeah, you heard me right. Apparently the detainees are participating in a hunger strike. Holman has a very particular message for them, though, and we have that clip right here. Can I get an amen? I do love the fact that he's like, okay, sure, go on a hunger strike. If you let it go too long and we feel like you're hurting yourself, we'll just petition the courts to allow us to force feed you. That's how you win an argument, folks. That's how you win an argument. Too often, I feel like our side has forgotten how to win arguments. But in some ways, we are fighting back. We're fighting back at the ballot box. They're fighting back in a lot of ways. We have folks like Scott Pressler, who, congratulations, by the way. I just learned the other day that he'd been elected to public office. I don't remember exactly what it was. It was something in Pennsylvania. But it's awesome that he is getting more and more involved politically. If anybody deserves to, it's him. I also find it interesting that how he got his start was by starting to go out and clean up trash in neighborhoods that he was living in, and then branched out from there. Apparently, in certain cities like Chicago, you're not allowed to do that, though, because if you do that, you're going to get arrested by the cops. Because the cops have cushy little contracts or the city has cushy little contracts with groups that actually don't do anything, but they get paid to not do anything. Which apparently there were some folks who decided they'd had enough and started taking it upon themselves to clean up the trash and debris in the streets, and they actually got a summons for it. Illinois, last I checked, was still part of America, so I find that interesting. But anyway. All right, so back to this, because this just ties it all back together. So what happened next tells you everything. Some Democrats and left-wing voices started hammering the guy who was screaming about the Nazi tattoo because he was hurting the party's chances in Maine. And again, if your first concern is Senate math instead of the Nazi tattoo or somebody potentially having Nazi sympathizing ideals, maybe the problem is not just the candidate. Maybe the problem is your moral calculator. So this takes us to Texas. Democratic voters in Texas 35 had a candidate whose comments became toxic and they rejected her. Good. That's exactly what should happen. But in this main story, the pressure seems to be going in the other direction. Don't say the obvious thing too loudly because there is a Senate seat involved, and that is how parties rot from the inside out. Not when they make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. Parties rot when they decide the mistake they've made is less important than the truth, especially if it impacts the math. They rot when they say, yes, that is bad, but control of the chamber is on the line. They rot when the principle becomes flexible depending on whether the offender has a D or an R next to the name that we're talking about, which takes me back to the clip from the commie, not Mamdani, the other one, who was, I don't want to hear anything from Republicans about family values or anything blah, 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 because of what they've done with Paxton. Well, you know what? Your side ain't got any room to talk either because you're putting a Nazi in office or trying to. So if you have to pull up the Senate map before deciding whether to condemn a Nazi tattoo, you've already lost the plot. So, all right. So we'll save this next part till after the break. I didn't realize I was already that close to the break. All right. So even though it is not Friday, I'm going to do something we don't normally do, except on Fridays, but it's only because I kind of feel like it matters, especially right now, because ICE is still out dealing with all the crazies. So I want to give a shout out to all of our first responders, whether they be local, federal, dispatchers, firefighters, EMS, whatever the case may be. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Comes in, somebody answers. Day or night, they're already moving. Calm voices, fast hands, doing the work while the rest of the world freezes. From a headset to a truck, from a badge to a door, they don't stop to count the cost. They step in when it matters. It's not about being seen, it's about being there. know the scene is clear. Someone's already making sense of the moment, keeping people alive, keeping things from getting worse. Some run toward danger, some stay behind and hold it together. Different roles, same weight, same promise to show up. When everything's on the line, they're already there. They're holding the line when the lines go dead, standing their ground when the world goes dark. They're the calm in the chaos, holding the line through the fire, the flood. When everything falls, they don't ask why, they just answer the call. Always standing in the gap for us all. This is service, this is sacrifice, this is how lives are saved. No spotlight, no applause, just showing up again and again. They're holding the line when the world goes dark. When everything's breaking, they hold their ground. They're the calm in the chaos, holding the line. So we raise our voices for the ones who stand. Every voice, every badge, every helping hand. They don't ask why, they just answer the call. Always standing in the gap for us all. Always standing in the gap for us all. For those who run and for those who hold steady, for those who stand in the gap.
And we're into the final segment of the program. Ladies and gentlemen, again, it is Chat Lives Matter Day, so we're into the final quarter of the show. I'll be back later tonight, first pushing buttons for the folks of Inquiry, and then back tonight pushing buttons for G, and then back either simulcasting or joining the folks at Behind Enemy Lines. Then there'll be Rick and Orty time at 10 p.m. Eastern, and hopefully Edge of Liberty at 11 p.m. Eastern, which will be our closing act. Again, if you are so inclined, please send some prayers, thoughts, positive vibes, whatever you got, to Mr. and Mrs. BZ. He's taking the week off because a dog that he first started as a foster dog and then decided he wanted to keep is probably about to make the trip across the Rainbow Bridge. So for those of us that love animals, you know how much that sucks. Just saying. And I don't always love my dogs. There are times that I keep telling my kids when these are gone, I'm done. But I'm a softie, so when these are gone and they, oh, Dad, that was cute, I'll be like, okay, fine. Yeah, don't even get me started because I'm such a softie when it comes to that crap. Anyway, so I found something, if I still have it, that I kind of want to play. It's a longer clip, so we may actually run just a little bit over today to finish everything off. But this goes into something that I had talked about last week, and this is Greg Gutfeld's answer to one of the questions that I'd been asking with this whole weird thing that seems to be going on with Dude's neck during a Fox interview. And I've seen a lot of folks who do camera work and everything else saying that it's a shadow. I have bad depth perception because one eye kind of does what it wants, but that doesn't sit well with me. And I'll be honest, I have not heard this yet. So we're gonna hear this together. Maybe. Do I have volume on it? Yeah, I do. Hang on, I know what I did wrong. Well, hang on, because now it's not playing the audio. See if this fixes it first, and then I may have to do a full reset here in a second, but hang on. Let's find out. Nope, still not playing it. All right, hang on. Dang technical issues. Gotta love them. Let me see if this fixes it. I'm curious. Because there has to be an easier way to clear this up when it does stupid stuff, so hang on. Okay, so let's find out now if this works.
Bill and Dana about the ongoing situation in Iran, but it was his neck that caused many viewers to suspect he was actually using a hyper-realistic disguise.
At the end of the day, we're going to have to need a government in Iran that not only hands over the nuclear material, stops threatening the Straits of Hormuz, but quits exporting the Islamic Revolution throughout the region.
Of course, Fox released a statement denying the conspiracy, saying it was a, quote, mobile camera operated by an outside vendor. And lighting conditions in the van, where apparently he was, contrasted with the vice admiral's jacket, which caused a shadow to appear on his neck. Right on, Fox. And we reached out to Robert for comment, and he said, I'm a U.S. Navy frogman, not a lizard. But I'm still wondering if there's more to this story. Our very own G. Nelson caught up with Dana to get her side of this controversy.
Oh, hey, Dana, I've been meaning to ask you, this story is crazy. Was the guy really wearing a mask?
Oh, the guy on Newsroom? No.
Yeah.
Gene, I can't believe that even you fell for that. It's just silly. It's ridiculous. It's a conspiracy theory. It's crazy.
Okay. All right.
Or is it?
Greg, you've been Dana Perino this whole time?
I knew it.
Yeah, don't tell her husband. Kat, why doesn't this guy just lean into this?
Right.
Just say, yes, I was wearing a mask that looks just like me.
Yeah, I saw all this while I was gone.
Yeah.
Because it's been everywhere.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I should say what my thought was.
What?
Okay, so I did think, like, I wish.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, I wish it were that interesting to work here. And I'm not saying it's not interesting. It's obviously a very cool job, right? Two things can be true. Number one, how cool is it to be on TV?
Yeah.
Right? Very cool. So cool. Few things are cooler than being on TV, except for maybe working in a place that's crawling with, like, reptilians wearing skin masks.
Yes.
That were made by the CIA.
Yes.
Which is what I saw a lot of people saying.
Yes. I want people to think that.
I'm like, what do you guys think it's like in here? Like, they're thinking, well, no. I think, of course.
Look.
Of course Fox News is crawling with reptilians and skin masks. What?
There are...
It's cable news.
Tyrus and I have been talking about this. We never see Sean Hannity in the bathroom. Bill Hemmer has his own private, like, little green room. God knows what he's doing in there. And they often bring in just buckets of sardines.
How does Hemmer just appear places, too?
Yeah.
He never got on a plane to go to China.
Yeah, no, he didn't. He just showed up there. That's a guy in a mask.
Yeah.
Do you buy this excuse that Fox put out?
For contractual reasons, yes. But having said that, first of all, him being reptilian is absolutely ridiculous. He's clearly a gray. And if you go back to the film, if you watch, it's the snoot on the bottom that's doing the talking. The mouth on the bottom's doing the talking. Watch it. Roll it when he talks. His mouth on the bottom is controlling the mouth on the top.
Do we? And it's weird because we have old footage of him, and
he does not look that smooth.
No, it doesn't. He looks different. I think we have some old tape of him, and there it is. Look how different.
See?
Yeah.
Now look, the president was supposed to release the UFO information never came out, right? And then on my podcast, I've had some scientists on.
Yeah.
Didn't we have like 10 scientists go missing?
Yes.
And then all of a sudden they getting cocky. They showing a little bit because that's not a shadow. It's talking.
Yes.
It's just what's crazy to me is that I should be able to be racist against them.
Yeah.
You just don't get the alien, just don't get to come on and just show up on TV and give your opinions. You got to wait in line.
Yeah. Also, I mean, he comes on as a white guy. That's kind of like cultural appropriation, don't you think?
Yeah, there's nothing more grotesque than an alien trying to use white privilege to run his mouth on television.
My culture is not your costume.
We should ban him. Not to mention, I'm pretty damn sure he's an illegal alien at that.
Yes.
So he needs to get back to the galaxy where he came from.
Yeah.
Yeah, the aliens are typecasting, though, for Fox News, apparently. I think this was actually a plot by the left.
You think so?
Yeah, and I agree with TRRS, what he said about it, moving. So originally I was like, oh, this is just so silly. I mean, we got all these conspiracy theorists online. But when I watched that clip right there, that little thing can eat a sandwich. Yep. I was thinking, like, is that a panini that he puts in there or more of a burrito? Because that thing can eat.
Brooke, what say you? He's an attractive man.
This is aging up.
Aging up? Yeah.
Aging up.
Yeah.
I've been in these vans, okay? And, I mean, they can't even get the table and the sound right sometimes, much less, you know, the lighting and provide you with a mask. But I think, you know, the story here really is that people just do not trust what they see anymore on the news.
Right.
You know, fake news. You know, we have the New York Times, and yes, I'm going to bring it back to this, publishing a fake story that the Israelis are training dogs to rape Palestinian prisoners. That's not even physiologically possible, right?
Way to bring this story into a dark place.
The news is so fake.
Do you think of
you
anything
can count
more
on
grim?
me for that. But it's fake story.
Is there any
after fake
necrophilia
story.
you can bring in?
But that was what was trending.
Yeah, I was thinking
right
the show
before
didn't have enough
this.
rape.
Dog rape.
We have a skit.
I hear what you're saying. You're absolutely right. But on that note, we've got to move on. All right, coming up, girls and guns.
All right, so I'm going to say I still don't know, but I've said this: I don't buy their line, and I'm not contractually obligated to agree with Fox. I don't buy their line. I don't buy their explanation. I'm watching the thing move on the bottom, and I'm like, yeah, no, something ain't right. So that was either some sort of failed AI filter thing trying to happen or something. I don't know what, but yeah, that's kind of weird that it happens right in the middle of the UFO file dumps. TRRS was only half right. There have been a lot of dumps. As a matter of fact, they just did another one. I'm still pouring through everything, and it's one of the reasons why I'm kind of glad we decided not to do the juxtaposition that we were going to do a couple weeks ago, since there's been yet another set of drops. And this guy might actually make the cut of being on our show this coming Saturday, because reasons. Anyway, yeah, I'm gonna. Jeff's supposed to be on. I'm gonna put him on the spot, and I'm gonna see if I can see if he knows who this guy is. You know, if you know, you know. All right, so a couple things, housekeeping before we get back into the prepared notes of the show. So I said that Chip Keating was related to former Governor Frank Keating, and I mixed up some things. For some reason, I was thinking Frank Keating was the Democrat. That wasn't him. That was actually the one after him. So Brad Henry, who was actually the one right after Frank Keating, was the Democrat who was in office from 2003 to 2011. Chip Keating goes by Chip, but he's actually Frank Keating's son. And his name is actually Chip Keating is not just carrying the Keating name. He's Frank Keating's son, which means he brings instant name ID, but also has to deal with the whole legacy. So his full name is actually Francis Anthony Chip Keating III. Should have just gone with Trip. Just saying. I almost named one of my kids after me, because then I could have just called them Trip for short, and I didn't do it. I'm regretting it. Anyway. All right. So I felt like I had to do a little bit of correction there because I was misspeaking. But yeah, I've had less caffeine than normal by this part of the day. So anyway, we got to give you some stuff to get through the rest of the show, of course. So we're going to lighten the mood just a little bit on the way out the door because sometimes politics gives you a serious point wrapped in pure comedy. Red State covered anti-ICE activists outside the ICE facility in Newark. There had been protests, clashes, pepper spray, and arrest. And as we talked about earlier, now there's a hunger strike going on in that particular facility. DHS reportedly said 2 people were arrested after clashes at the facility, but the moment that tells the story is the one where activists apparently cheered 2 Hispanic-looking men leaving the facility because they assumed they were detainees being released. And then the staff at the gate started laughing because the men worked there. They worked there. You can't script it any better than that. The people screaming about stereotypes accidentally stereotyped the Hispanic guys working at the ICE facility. That's not activism. That's a Portlandia sketch with pepper spray. But underneath the comedy, there's a serious point. Ideology makes people stupid when it forces them to see every person as a symbol instead of a human being. They didn't see 2 men. They saw a narrative. They saw what they wanted the moment to be. They saw what would make the chant feel righteous. They saw what would make the camera shot work, and they thought they saw what was going to give them validation for being there in the first place. And then reality walked out the gate wearing an employee badge. That is the danger of activist politics when it becomes performance and performative. You stop asking what is true, you start asking what fits. And when reality doesn't fit, you clap for the wrong people and wonder why everybody's laughing at you. So let's talk about Minneapolis for a second. According to Town Hall's Amy Curtis, Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara has resigned after an investigation found he interfered with a prior investigation. The article says the mayor's written reprimand accused him of deleting a contact card from a city-issued phone and discussing the investigation despite being told not to. NPR and other local reporting also confirmed that the resignation and the broader disciplinary issue, and Mayor Jacob Frey put the core of it very cleanly, trust is not secondary to the job. It is the job, which is kind of ironic coming from him, even if he is right in this context. And this story matters because Minneapolis has spent years as one of the central cities in America's policing debate. Reform, accountability, trust, community, transparency, all those words have been used over and over again. And then the police chief resigns after a finding that he interfered with an investigation. That's a problem. That's a huge problem. Not because we should overstate the underlying allegation. The reporting notes the underlying allegations were not substantiated. The issue here is the interference, because if you are the chief of police, that is not secondary to the job. Trust is your job, and that is exactly right. You cannot rebuild public confidence in a department by proving leadership still thinks rules are for thee and not for me. You cannot lecture the public about accountability with the top of the while the top of the department is being accused of shielding information, deleting contacts, and working around investigators. And this ties the whole day together. Voters are tired of automatic renewal because they are tired of being asked to trust people who do not act trustworthy. They are tired of being told that seniority equals representation. They're tired of being told that activism equals morality. They're tired of being told that institutions deserve trust while evidence is hidden, rules are bent, or standards change depending on who benefits. One of the questions I ask all the time on this show, cui bono? It's Latin for who benefits. That is the through line. Cornyn loses because voters didn't want him to be in office anymore because they felt like he wasn't listening to them. Galindo lost because voters are tired of the crazy. Al Green lost because voters didn't want any more political theater. The Biden tapes matter because the public is tired of being told not to believe its own eyes. The Plattner story matters because principle should not depend on Senate math. The ICE protest story matters because reality still gets a vote. The Minneapolis story matters because trust is not a slogan, it's the job. So after all of that, we're going to end on a little bit of a more fun note because America is not just our politics, and thank God for that. We're heading towards America's 250th birthday, and some of its celebrations are exactly what you would expect from this country. Huge, patriotic, overbuilt, slightly ridiculous, And honestly, kind of awesome. The Hoover Dam just kicked off America 250 with a massive American flag and a red, white, and blue light display. The installation features a flag measuring 300 feet wide by 150 feet tall, suspended across the dam with patriotic illumination around it. Say what you want about America, but when we decide to decorate a dam, we decorate the damn dam. And then there's the White House UFC fight. Yeah, that's a real sentence, and a lot of Democrats are pissed off about it. AP reports crews are building a temporary octagon-shaped cage on the White House South Lawn for a UFC event on June 14th, 2026, tied to America's 250th anniversary and President Trump's 80th birthday. It's also a Flag Day, by the way. Only America could celebrate 250 years of constitutional government by putting an octagon on the White House lawn. Madison wrote Federalist Papers so Justin Gaethje could throw leg kicks near the Rose Garden. But for all the leftists that are having a fit about this, there was a certain president, one of the Roosevelts, Theodore Roosevelt, that one, who loved boxing and actually turned the basement of the White House into a boxing ring. So it's not like this stuff is new. Now, there hasn't really been a public spectacle of this fashion here before, but let's not forget that years past they were doing like horse racing and everything else. So it's not like any of this is completely new. UFC is just one of the youngest ones to get a seat at the table. So, but that's only the beginning, because it doesn't stop there. The Great American State Fair is coming to the National Mall from June 25th to July 10th, with all 50 states, territories, and federal agencies showcasing their food, culture, and pride. A state fair on the National Mall sounds like exactly the kind of chaos this country deserves. Funnel cakes, flags, and somebody from Congress pretending they know how to milk a cow. Then in August, they are putting Indy cars on the National Mall for the Freedom 250 Grand Prix of Washington, D.C. The official schedule says this will be the first motor race in history on the National Mall, with a Washington Monument and U.S. Capitol as the backdrop. Somewhere, a founding father just adjusted his powdered wig and said, finally, some horsepower. And for the classy crowd, New York Harbor gets tall ships from around the world. Sailforth 250 says the celebration includes 6 days of events with ships and crews from 32 countries and 15,000 sailors. Tall ships in New York Harbor for America's 250th birthday is the elegant version of the UFC cage. Same birthday party, different footwear. There is even a civic side to all of this. America 250 says it wants to engage 350 Americans by the nation's 250th anniversary, and its America's block party effort is built around local celebrations, live stream moments, and giving forth a push to turn Independence Day into a record-setting day of charitable giving. And honestly, that's a pretty good note to end on, because after a whole show about voters firing politicians, parties losing their minds, institutions hiding evidence, and activists clapping for the wrong people and the wrong reasons, it is worth remembering that America is still bigger than all of that. It is messy. It is loud. It's argumentative. It sometimes celebrates its birthday with a football-sized field flag on a dam and a cage fight on the White House lawn. But it's still ours. And 250 years in, that's still something worth celebrating. So where does that leave us exactly? Texas gave us the political earthquake of the week. Can Paxton beat John Cornyn? And whatever happens in November, the primary message was unmistakable. The Republican base is done automatically renewing the old Senate contracts. But Texas did not stop there. Democratic voters in Texas 35 rejected Maureen Galindo after comments that should have been politically radioactive from the start. Christian Menifee beat Al Green in a redrawn Houston district that ended a 2-decade congressional career. Across the board, voters were not simply rubber stamping the familiar anymore. Back home in Oklahoma, our governor's race is coming fast. On the Democratic side, there's very little public polling that I can find anywhere. On the Republican side, the field is crowded. Older polling showed a real race for the top two, and the June 16th primary is close enough that nobody should be pretending this is theoretical anymore. And nationally, the same trust problem keeps showing up in different costumes. Biden's tapes, party standards, ICE protests, Minneapolis police leadership. Different stories, same disease. People in power keep asking for trust while acting surprised that the public wants receipts. But the final word today does not have to be cynicism, because America is still bigger than the mess, bigger than the politicians, bigger than the parties, bigger than the activists who mistake theater for truth, bigger than every institution that forgot trust has to be earned. 250 years in, we are still loud, restless, stubborn, creative, occasionally ridiculous enough to put a UFC cage on the White House lawn and a giant flag on the Hoover Dam. And that sounds about right. This country is messy because free people are messy. It is argumentative because self-government is, in fact, argumentative by design. It is frustrating because nobody gets to own it forever. And maybe that's the point of today's whole show. Automatic renewal is canceled because this country still belongs to the people, and it seems like the ones that we put in charge have forgotten that. It doesn't belong to the Senate Club, doesn't belong to the consultants, it doesn't belong to the activists, nor the bureaucrats. It belongs to the people. And 250 years later, that is still one of the best ideas anybody has ever had. And that will conclude today's show, ladies and gentlemen. Want to thank you for those who hung out for the entirety, including the press conference, which are for the cabinet meeting, which kind of threw my schedule off. But I didn't want to shortchange you guys today, especially since I didn't do a show on Monday. But I'll be back later tonight pushing buttons for First Inquiry, followed by the Conservative Curmudgeon, followed by Behind Enemy Lines Radio, then Rick and Orty. We'll finish up over here before we head over into SHR Media territory, hopefully for Edge of Liberty. All shows subject to availability and time change. My name is Rick Robinson. I am the general manager at KLRNradio.com, also the news director, general manager, and managing editor, Digital Beacon US News, and we'll be back later tonight. Bye, everybody.
Fire in his voice, facts in his hand, talking sense to the heart of this land. It's the Rick Robinson Show, where the truth rides high. No spin, no script, just an eagle in the sky. From D.C. to Tulsa, he's calling it out.
For anybody watching on the camera, my allergies are killing me. Don't judge me.
Breaking down the noise, cutting through the lies, shining light where the shadow hides. With guests in the mix and callers on cue, he's a voice for the many, not the few. Well, grab your coffee, raise that flag, stand your ground, never wave that rag.
Say goodnight, Gracie.